Welcome to this afternoon's program on achieving the Paris goals and walking in the light of Fratelli Tutti through a just transition from fossil fuels. We're very fortunate right now to have with us Lyndon Moma, coming to us from South Africa, Johannesburg, South Africa, where it's 10 p.m. And she's graciously offered to share. She is a member of the leadership team of Laudato Si movement. She is the director of advocacy. And I'd like to read you her bio before she starts. Lyndon Moma combines her human rights law background with her passion for tackling the climate crisis and promoting ecological justice. In joining the Laudato Si movement, she was able to integrate her spirituality with her vocation. Lyndon has over 20 years' experience in strategic leadership within the environmental justice sector, most recently serving as Africa Program Director of Greenpeace Africa and Wild Aid. She is a trained developmental industry executive leader based on her training from Syracuse University Maxwell School of Leadership, and also the Robert Gass Transformational Leadership Program. Lyndon Moma is a member of the Board of Advisors at the International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance, known as International IDEA. It's based in Sweden, and she is keen on advancing democracy amidst the climate crisis. Her volunteer work also extends to serving as a council member of the Council of Seven at Good for Trust, South Africa. And today, Lyndon is speaking to us in her role as Director of Advocacy for the Laudato Si movement. Welcome, Lyndon.
Thank you, Maritza. Thank you for having me. And indeed, it's a pleasure to join you, even though it's 10 p.m. I'm so excited to share with you Laudato Si's movement, Walk Towards a Just Transition. And yeah, if that's okay with you, I can just go ahead.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Wonderful. So yes, I, as Marita so graciously introduced me, I serve as the Advocacy Director of Laudato Si movement based in Johannesburg. And I'm just to tell you a bit about our mission. 8 years ago, Laudato Si movement was born, and the mission is to inspire and mobilize the Catholic community to care for our common home, planet Earth, and achieve climate and ecological justice. We would do this if we empower Catholics to drive sustained action towards eco-conversion, sustainability, and bold prophetic advocacy, and connect Catholics for a more significant collective impact. Then, when we do that, we will fulfill our mission. Laudato Si movement, as the name goes, indeed is built of the Laudato Si encyclical, which came out in 2015 by Pope Francis. Our movement is based on this encyclical, and we live and breathe Laudato Si by working closely with the Vatican. As you can see there, our executive director, and grasstops other structures of the church, and also connecting other global leaders to the Christian Catholic faith. We are very deeply rooted in our grassroots movements. We work through Laudato Si animators, we call them LSAs, who are individuals wanting to take care of creation. To become a Laudato Si animator, you have to receive a couple of trainings. As of date, we have 30,000 Laudato Si animators. 9,000 of those are certified. Certified means that they've actually taken the Laudato Si course and have pledged to carry out Laudato Si. And these 9,000 animators are spread over 170 countries all over the globe. So this map here just gives you an example of where we are spread across the globe. And I'm right there somewhere in Johannesburg. But again, Laudato Si animators form a global network spread all over the globe, preaching the good news of Laudato Si. Okay, just go back. Here I just have some slides to show you the good work of Laudato Si animators all over the globe. On the right, you see an outdoor mass organized by Laudato Si animators. Below here, you see Laudato Si animators taking a circle, taking action together, calling for climate justice. Above here, you see Laudato Si secretariat staff and animators meeting with a bishop in Poland. And on the right, you would see some of us there having a training with Laudato Si animators on the climate crisis and energy transition. This was actually a training that took place with Laudato Si animators in Latin America. We really strive to grow and empower our network to our theory of change. We do that really by empowering Catholics to take sustained action, not just a once-off action, but sustained action through eco-conversion. Eco-conversion is changing your lifestyle, having a spiritual conversion as much as you also have an ecological conversion. And then that leads you to take sustainable actions, a sustainable lifestyle. And then bold and prophetic advocacy, which what I lead. Basically taking a step forward to change policies and government's laws around climate change. And when we do that, we also try and connect Catholics for a more significant impact. And we believe if we can do this, where we empower Catholics to take actions through these 3 steps, and we have them to take more collective action, we will be fulfilling our mission of living Laudato Si. Here you would see some really just wonderful images of trainings that we do online and offline to empower people on Laudato Si. We use digital friendly tools. We do work offline as well. But during the pandemic, we did a lot of training online. Our key moments actually are during Lent, which is coming up now, and I'll tell you a bit more about that. But also Laudato Si week, which usually takes place around May. Season of Creation takes place around September. And then we also make it a point to participate in the COPs. And last year, we launched an amazing film campaign, which I'll tell you about that shortly. So yes, it gives me great pleasure to talk about The Letter, which is the film that we have been working on at Laudato Si for quite a while now. And it came out last year on 5th of October. So indeed, The Letter is Laudato Si is based on the encyclical on climate change and ecology. It offers a transformative new vision of environmental protection. And Laudato Si movement did this movie in partnership with Off the Fence. Off the Fence is this big movie producer. They actually released The Octopus Teacher. So it was really a great collaboration. And the movie was released, as I said, in October last year. And so the movie tries to bring Pope Francis's vision of integral ecology to life. And as of now, the film is available. It can be streamed live on YouTube for all audiences around the world. A brief just mentioning that if you've not seen the film, this is an invitation, like a teaser for you to kind of go and watch the film. And it really features frontline champions who are taking climate change, the climate crisis, who have been affected by the climate crisis. Each of these protagonists in the movie represents a voice that is not being heard. The first voice is the voice of the indigenous people. The second is the voice of the young people. The third is the voice of the poor and the marginalized. And then the fourth voice is the voice of nature. I bet you agree with me that these voices are not heard as much as we should be hearing them. But the film follows these people coming together in a dialogue with Pope Francis. throughout the film, we see the characters, how they find unity in their distinct experiences, their distinct worldview, but they come together in unity and strength to tackle the common challenges that we face. Pope Francis also stars in this movie. He's one of the main protagonists in this movie. And, just talking about Pope Francis, a humble man. And, he encourages us all the time to protect this planet, our common home, as a way to love one another and to show love for our Creator. Again, when the Laudato Si came to when it was published in 2015, it was addressed to everyone. It wasn't just addressed to Catholics. It was addressed to everyone, all people of goodwill, to take part in solving the planetary crisis that we live today. And Pope Francis tells us that everything is connected. And through Laudato Si, in Laudato Si, we have to hear both the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. So I'll just tell you a bit more about the characters, but indeed this film really did bring Laudato Si to life because it heard those voices that we never do hear, the voice of nature, the voice of the poor. Let me start with the voice of the indigenous people. Chief Dada in the movie stars as this is a real life character. He's a protagonist, and Chief Dada is a leader of the Nova Luga tribe in Brazil. And he talks about the illegal logging in his community. He talks about, how mining and fossil fuel industries are taking over his community and what he's doing to fight that. He's trying to use new techniques to capture data around all this logging. And his work has actually triggered some sort of response because he's being targeted. But it's also the governments have realized, the governments are standing up to take action. We really celebrate the courageous leadership of Chief Dada, and we pray that he continues his journey of advocating for the voice of advocating on behalf of the voice of the indigenous people. Ridhima Pandey talks about, she's a protagonist representing the voice of the youth. Ridhima is a young climate activist. She did a lawsuit in one of she did a lawsuit in India, and she's been involved in activism since she was 9 years old. Ridhima really brings out, what the young people are going through, what they are experiencing, the loss that they're experiencing, the fear that they're experiencing in the climate crisis. Usually we don't have the space to hear young people. And we're so blessed that in this film, Ridhima's voice could be the voice of the youth. Robin and Martin Asner are the voice of nature or wildlife. They are both biologists, and they've been working together as scientists and, documenting the loss of marine biodiversity. And they come in from the Arizona State University, and they both live in Hawaii. And if you watch the movie, it's interesting to see how science has documented how humans have constantly been eradicating marine biodiversity through various sorts of pollution, etc. And he uses all these techniques, scientific techniques. He uses 3D maps to show how biodiversity has been eroded on a continuous basis. Really, really amazing stuff there. And then we talk about, the movie also presents Aruna Kande. He is the voice of the poor. Aruna grew up in Senegal, and where majority of the people live in poverty. And Aruna's family was unable to provide for him. And so at the age of 8, he left and went to the coastal city of Saint Louis. And there he had to live off the streets, etc. But, given the migration crisis, Aruna stayed back. He stayed back. He did not migrate to Europe. And he's dedicated his life to working with children on the streets. He's dedicated his life to working with orphans on the streets, giving them a better hope. His story really talks about the poor who have been affected by the climate crisis, and really shows a deep picture around those who have to leave their homes and migrate because they really have no home. Their homes have been overtaken by climate change. So with the launch of the movie, we have an impact campaign we're hoping that people don't just watch the movie, but they watch the movie and share the message of Laudato Si. And also by broadening the universe of actors who are taking action on climate and ecological justice. We also want to shift narratives, through this movie to get other worldviews, other perspectives, and to limit the narrative that says that there is no climate change. Again, the movie really encourages, it seeks to change policies to achieve ecological justice. So just to share with you, when the movie was launched in October, we did a study to see how the movie had done. And this is some sort of like, oh, wow, this movie, how did it go? In 1 month, we had 5,000 mentions of the letter on social media, just in 1 month, and about 11,000 engagements on various social media platforms. It was shared widely. It was so much appreciated. You can see on Twitter, we had 4.5K mentions on Twitter. We had 2.3 members using the handles, talking about the letter. It was just, it went all over the place. It was mentioned in 97 countries at the time. You can see majority in the US, but also in Latin America and in Africa. The movie went wild. So over a 1 month period, we had 481 pieces of media coverage. And a lot of them from the UK, the US, Canada, but also from Africa, some parts of Africa and Australia. But that's just an idea of where the letter got coverage. And we did succeed in reaching some new audiences, because that is one of the goals of the letter, right? The impact campaign, to reach some new audiences. We had assumed that we would primarily reach Catholic audiences in the US and the UK, but we were surprised that we got to reach some audiences. For example, when Leonardo DiCaprio tweeted about the letter, and he introduced us to a wide range of audiences. Even Arnold Schwarzenegger tweeted about the letter, introducing us to a wide range of audiences. So indeed, the letter film really brings to heart, it really brings to life Laudato Si and Pope Francis's vision of everyone living Laudato Si, not just Catholics, but everyone of goodwill. If you may, let me just show you a teaser, a trailer of the letter. And in case you haven't watched it, this is an invitation to watch it.
Vatican releases Pope Francis's wildly anticipated encyclical on the environment.
La naturaleza grita. Téngase. Téngase.
Decision climatique. Manque de la protection de la nature qui pousse aujourd'hui de notre population à quitter ces mots.
Perder a terra, a floresta, o grande agronegócio que está chegando aí.
Marine heat waves are causing an unknown amount of death among corals.
I want all the global leaders to do something to stop climate change, because if it's not going to be stopped, it's going to harm our future.
Queridos poetas sociales, porque ustedes son poetas sociales porque tienen la capacidad y el coraje de crear esperanza allí donde solo aparece descarte y exclusión.
Je n'arrive pas à rester tranquille, parfois j'ai une esprit qui voyage.
O mundo vai mudar. Porque o que estava encoberto, hoje está sendo descoberto.
Il faut lisser des liens très forts et il ne faut jamais rompre ce lien.
Che nessuno di noi è un'issa, ma tutti bisogno di un deviare.
Try to be the change you want to see in the world.
We arrived as individuals with very different stories, but we all shared a dream.
Thank you. So an invitation to go watch the letter, and just as a tidbit, all the protagonists got to travel to the Vatican and meet Pope Francis, obviously to record the movie, but also during the premiere of the letter, they got to go back to the Vatican to meet Pope Francis, and these are some images of that. Okay, I am going to transition now to talk about what Laudato Si movement has been doing to achieve the Paris goals through a just transition from fossil fuels. Marita, do you have any questions or should I just go ahead?
Yes, that was wonderful, that presentation, and it really, I love the emphasis on the letter and its distribution and its response and involvement. And I was wondering, one of the questions was, are there non-Catholics that are being involved? I know that the Laudato Si movement is a Catholic movement, and the Pope invites all like-minded people in the encyclical. And so I wondered if there's been any collaboration as a result of this.
Thank you. That's a really good question, Marita, because indeed the letter seeks to not just reach out to Catholics, but all people of goodwill. And in the next couple of slides, I will show you some moments where we've actually involved non-Catholics in the screening of the letter, in bringing the message of Laudato Si, actually at COP. So everyone is called upon to engage in solving the climate crisis, and the letter is actually about that, solving the climate crisis. So yes, there's been a lot of collaboration, not just with Catholics, but people of all faiths and also political leaders.
Wonderful. That's the only question so far on the chat.
Wonderful. I would go now to talk about what we did at COP27, which took place in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. Just to say that as a common family of Catholics, we had 4 urgent pillars that we wanted to advance at COP27. These 4 pillars, we believe, marked principles of fairness, equity, and justice according to our Catholic social teaching and faith values. First of all, mitigation. Emphasis was placed on the importance of divestment and rapid elimination from fossil fuels, together with development of alternative energy sources. That was one pillar that the Catholics took to COP. Second pillar was on finance. Representatives noted that there was a lack of financing to establish a shift in economic paradigms, and that there must be a lot of finance put forward for renewable energy that would benefit all communities, especially the smaller communities. Again, on loss and damage, which was the highlight of COP27, we called for increased financing for loss and damage and for it to be established as a pillar of the Paris Agreement. Adaptation, calling for adaptation to be enforced. Climate change is a challenge that affects all of us, but not equally. noting that women and girls are most affected. The global south, you saw in the movie, people being displaced through climate change. So putting on a lot of funding for adaptation, especially for the least amongst us. What Laudato Si movement focused on was mitigation, climate change mitigation, and national determined contributions. We underline from our Catholic social teaching that mitigation includes unfailingly considering divestment of fossil fuels and their rapid and immediate phase out against carbon colonialism, together with development of alternative energy solutions. And Laudato Si points out that we know that technology based on fossil fuels or highly polluting fossil fuels, both of coal, but still oil, and to a lesser extent gas, needs to be replaced progressively and without delay. So obviously it's not an overnight replacement, but we were expecting that at COP27, there would be an advancement of phasing out coal, which is the most polluting fossil fuel, oil and gas, progressively and without delay. And obviously this is based on the Paris Agreement, right? We all know that the Paris Agreement in Article 2 points out that, we should try and limit global temperatures to 1.5 degrees. And that will be done if we actually phase out fossil fuels. So with this in mind, we went to COP to amplify our Catholic Church message on Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty, which is a treaty asking for fossil fuels to be phased out in a just manner and for no more fossil fuels to be taken on. Also, we went to COP asking for fossil fuel divestment, not just governments, but also individuals and the Catholic Church and other institutions to divest from fossil fuel. And also knowing that the climate crisis is very linked to the biodiversity crisis, asking for no more biodiversity collapse. We use the letter as a tool, the letter film, as a tool to amplify these messages. We also used our Catholic social teaching, which speaks about the twin crisis of biodiversity and the climate crisis. And then this was also a moment for us to network with the Catholic Church and also people of faith. This was the first time that the Vatican was admitted to UNFCCC as a state party. So it was a good moment for us to also network with the Vatican and other Catholic actors. What did we do at COP? So in answer to your question, Marita, we engaged various governments, various institutions and other actors around our priorities of phasing out fossil fuel. One of those was actually with the government of Senegal. You can see that in the movie, one of the protagonists was from Senegal. Senegal is a country that has a Catholic majority, but also Muslim. And it was so amazing that the government of Senegal actually hosted the Vatican in a conference where we not only reached out to Catholics, but we reached out to a Muslim audience through that. And the head of the Senegalese delegation, you can see him sitting right there, was part of that. And the Vatican actually sent the nuncio of the Arab states and of Egypt to speak at this conference. This conference actually highlighted the voice of the poor. Obviously, because the movie talks about the poor as a voice that is not heard, it was really important for Laudato Si movement to start the conversations around the voice of the poor, noting that the poor will be the most affected. And then the poor also noting that they will not be able to justly transition away from fossil fuel, but they have to justly transition away from fossil fuel. These are some of the conversations that we had. It was really wonderful to see, a Catholic and a Muslim panel come together, and also a very mixed audience. So yes, Maritza, we are engaging a broad spectrum of people of goodwill and people of faith, and also engaging with government officials, as you can see here. We also carried out another screening of the movie and panel discussion with the Arizona State University, with Greenpeace and the Catholic Church in Africa. This one was focused on science. Again, looking at the movie, it talks about the voice of the poor. It also talks about the voice of wildlife and how science is being used to bring up the voice of wildlife. Greg Asner hails from Arizona State University, so it was such a privilege for the Arizona State University to host us. This panel discussion had high-level speakers from the Catholic Church in Africa, notably Cardinal Abongo, actually brought the voice of the Africans to this scientific discussion. And we had Laudato Si Movement's board chair, Yep. He's actually the executive director of Greenpeace in Asia. He was also part of this panel discussion. And it talked about the energy deficit of Africa and what science is doing to address that energy deficit. It talked about the need to look at clean energy and not just dirty energy. We also had the participation of the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty that made a vital call to broader civil society to phase out fossil fuel. Another screening that we did was at the innovation stage, where LSM managed to have the film really just focused on the youth. Again, the voice of the youth is one of those voices that we don't hear as much, but they're growing, and we're really, really happy to be supporting the growing voices of the youth. And this was just, a stage where it wasn't as formal as you would have in the green zone, where the other two was very formal with government officials. But this was a stage where it was really interactive with the voices of the youth, asking questions about how they can shift from their normal ways of life, and tell stories also about how they are shifting their ways of life to adapt to a life that really lives Laudato Si. At COP itself, in the green zone, we had a webinar that looked at Catholic perspectives at COP27 and prepared or advanced our pillars of COP27, what we were seeking overall based on climate change and climate justice. This pillar in itself, this conference brought together statements that seek to influence the outcome of COP27, but really on a fossil fuel phase out. Throughout the whole week, we had a documentary video exhibition where we shared clips of the letter, we shared clips of what we are doing, we had panel discussions. This exhibition space was a really great space for Laudato Si animators, Laudato Si partners who were at COP to come together and gather and talk about what was happening at COP, share strategies, engage with one another. I can tell you that this was so exciting because we saw some of our member organizations and Laudato Si animators who've not seen for a while come to this exhibition stage and just, you know, talk about their experiences at COP and re-strategize on what we were going to do. So let me just, having just shared with you what we did at COP, what is our assessment of COP? Reading from Laudato Si, paragraph 54, Pope Francis says the failure of global summits on the environment makes it plain that our politics are subject to technology and finance. There are too many special interests and economic interests that easily end up trumping the common good and manipulating information so their plans will not be affected. And this was our experience at COP, sadly so. First of all, we experienced what came out of COP27 was some level of stagnation. Stagnation in terms of we stagnated to achieve some form of climate justice. At COP26, we had a moment where we celebrated the statement that said fossil fuel will be phased out. Fossil fuel subsidies would also be phased out. Even though the phasing out of fossil fuel or phasing out of unabated coal doesn't really have a meaning, but at least it was a start that countries should start looking at phasing out unabated coal and inefficient oil subsidies. And the plan was, or the hope and the ambition and all our strategies we hoped would lead to an advancement of that language where we start seeing concrete plans at COP28 of a phasing down of unabated fossil fuels. However, this did not happen. Again, so coming to COP27, there was just so much talk. Again, negotiators spent a lot of time throughout the night trying to look at the dotting the I's and the T's, looking at the documents, looking at financing, etc. But it was so disappointing to see that the final text was a repeat, was basically a cut and paste of what had happened in COP26. It was a cut and paste of phase down, phase out, no advancement. And that's why we say it was a stagnation. So what is clear is that some countries are stubbornly refusing to heed to the warnings of climate science. They are stubbornly refusing to listen to the IPCC reports that we must halve carbon dioxide emissions by 2030. And we can only halve carbon dioxide emissions by 2030 if we start rolling back the use of fossil fuels. It's important to note that, you know, the oil lobbies were quite heavy and monopolized the conversation. Some other civil society organizations did reports about the presence of oil lobbies at COP, which sometimes even was more than some country delegations at COP. Despite all of this, some progress was made. It's important to note that there was progress made on financial arrangements for assisting developing countries that are particularly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, including the establishment of a fund and mobilization of new and additional resources. So recognizing that money needs to be put for loss and damage was an amazing result from COP27. Another amazing result was the fact that there was a launch of a ministerial platform to tackle just transition. That hadn't been done before, just transition to alternative forms of energy. You know, so this was just like the beginning of the talks. But again, this is kind of like a very slow progress because COP26 had already said that, you know, we should start looking at phasing out fossil fuel. So this ministerial discussion should have happened, but it's progress nevertheless. So in a nutshell, the outcome of COP27 was deeply disappointing for the Catholic community. We had hoped and worked for an advancement of agreement of fossil fuel phase out. Instead, what we saw was a cut and paste of what happened in Glasgow, a phase down of unabated coal power, phase out of inefficient oil subsidies, and an inclusion of transition to low emission energy, which is essentially gas. That is still a source of greenhouse gas emissions. Gas is still a source of greenhouse gas emissions. So, what is the way forward? Together with Pope Francis, and 7 years after Laudato Si and after the Paris Agreement, we conclude by saying that, with regard to the climate change, we have really made very few progress. But yet, many things can still be done, and we believe that many things can still happen. We're not losing hope. We're people of faith, we don't lose hope. So I just want to quote Laudato Si paragraph 202 here that says, many things have to change course, but it is we human beings above all who need to change. We lack an awareness of our common origin, of our mutual belonging, and of a future to be shared with everyone. This basic awareness should enable the development of new convictions, attitudes, and forms of life. A great cultural, spiritual, and educational challenge stands before us, and it will demand that we set out on a long path of renewal. Having said that, in the next segment, I would like to introduce you to one of those ways where we can take action, where we can change. Laudato Si movement has been engaged in a campaign that seeks to divest from fossil fuels, that seeks to encourage Catholics to divest from fossil fuel. And ever since it was launched, it has been growing. Catholic institutions have been divesting from fossil fuel by taking out their money from the fossil fuel industry. So we continue to prevent the growth of the fossil fuel industry by removing our money from that industry, because we know that technology based on the use of highly polluting fossil fuels, especially coal, but also oil, and to a lesser degree gas, needs to be progressively replaced without delay. The politics and businesses have been slow to react in a way that is consummated with the urgency of the challenges we face, the climate challenges we face. So we need to take action to remove our finances from the fossil fuel industry. Because if we don't do that, the fossil fuel industry will continue investing in new projects. They will continue digging up coal. They will continue polluting our planet. So in case you don't know, but Catholic institutions, maybe through some of their financial investments, may knowingly or unknowingly support the fossil fuel industry. But this is an opportunity that Laudato Si movement is offering for you to take out your money from that industry. Noting that the divesting from fossil fuel is the moral thing to do, the other arguments, to divest from fossil fuel, it has been made, the moral thing is clear, and the Vatican has made an explicit call for Catholics to divest from fossil fuel. That came out in Care for Our Common Home 5 years after Laudato Si was launched. It was clear that the spreading the use of ethical, responsible, and integral criteria for investments avoids the support of harmful companies and also harming our social ecology. So, for example, abortion and weapons, and for environmental ecology, for example, fossil fuels. So we need to get out of the fossil fuel industry as Catholics and people of goodwill. Divesting from fossil fuel is also a financially sound decision. The fossil fuel industry is bound to be phased out. It's bound to end. So if you're wise, it's better you move your money out of that. Now, investment managers have recognized that putting their money in the fossil fuel industry it's a huge risk. Yeah. And so many people are beginning to reject fossil fuels, and governments are finding that, some of the assets will be stranded. Even, the New York Pension Fund, which is a leading investment edge, has recognized that, putting money in the fossil fuel industry is actually a risk. So we invite you to join the growing movement of Catholics who are taking out their money from the fossil fuel industry. So far, over 330 Catholic institutions have already pledged to take out money, billions of dollars from the fossil fuel industry. And we have a lot of materials and tools which are published on our website that provides maybe a guide on how to speak to your institutions. It provides a guide on how to reach to your diocese, on how to organize webinars to discuss fossil fuels. And of course, we are available to support. This lens, Laudato Si movement, in collaboration with other organizations, will be launching a campaign to empower Catholics and people of faith to divest. So there will be a particular week in Lent where we'll be making a call and doing a lot of capacity building around divestment from fossil fuels. So we'll be having speakers, just sharing their knowledge on fossil fuel divestments. And we invite all Catholics and people of goodwill to take this opportunity to learn about fossil fuel divestments, send a letter to their bishop or a Catholic institution close by, hold an activity, screen the letter, have a prayer vigil. There's so many activities that you can do that would encourage Catholics and other people of faith to actually move their money from the fossil fuel industry. The power is in your hands. The power is really in your hands, because if you don't know where your money is, the Bible says that, where your treasure is, so your heart is. If your money is in the fossil fuel industry, unfortunately, that's maybe where your heart is. But through this campaign, we're encouraging that, you take your money out of the fossil fuel industry and put it in the renewable industry sector, which is actually the future. And when you do that, please do work with Laudato Si movement. We're here to support you, and also just show your commitments to caring for our common home by joining the next divestment announcements. We have these divestment announcements annually, sometimes biannually, where we celebrate those who have divested from fossil fuels. And the next announcement will be on the 22nd of April, which is Earth Day. At this moment, I think I will say a big thank you and stop sharing my screen. Marita?
That was wonderful. Finland, Moma. I'm just looking here. I wonder if you could repeat the two. I know that it appears that there were not many. There was not a significant positive effect of COP27. There wasn't any big major change, but there were two positive outcomes that you described. And I wonder if you could describe them again for our audience.
I'll definitely do that. One of them is a pledge on loss and damage, money being put aside for loss and damage, which was one of the pillars that we asked for. Yeah, it's one of the pillars that Catholics asked for at COP27, along with many others. So the COP27 recognized the need to support loss and damage, especially for the most vulnerable people among us, and also to establish a fund to assist developing countries to cater for loss and damage, which we are, by the way, already experiencing, and are not able to cope with the impacts of climate change. The other positive impact was an establishment of a ministerial body that would look at just transition to alternative energies. It's basically a forum where ministers of energy come together to start looking at a just transition to alternative energy.
Thank you. So as I remember, there were 4 pillars when you went to COP27, and one of those was achieved. What you just described was,
yes.
Yes. Also, I was thinking about in that green area of the meeting, it seems like there was a lot of rich interaction and affirmation and opportunity to build on the film, The Letter, connecting, for example, with the Muslim Senegalese people. And there was another exhibit that emphasizing on youth, even though I believe it was the youth of Africa. But it seemed like there were different events that it was very exciting for me to hear about the events that you had there. Could you maybe talk a little bit more about those?
Sure, I will do that. Thank you, Marita, for the question. Let me just start with the first one you talked about, loss and damage. It was, I would say it was progress. The fact that the financial fund arrangements were put in place for loss and damage. But to be honest, this was overdue. Like this, this was way overdue because the impacts of climate change have been felt for many years. And the countries that did the least to cause climate change are the ones who are experiencing the impacts the most. So even though it's progress a bit too late. As we celebrate that as progress, the hope is that, and the strategy is that should actually come up, the money for loss and damage should come quickly. Yeah, it should come a bit quickly. This should have happened years ago because we are already experiencing the impacts of climate change across the world, and worse so in countries who have the least resources or least developed and have done the least to cause the climate crisis. So yeah, I just wanted to put that note there that yes, it was progress, but progress a bit too late nevertheless. You asked a question about the activities that took place in the green zone. There is a lot that is put to screening the movie. It is a 90 minutes a movie, and not being able to show all of it because it's a very busy place where delegates running up and down. We screened segments of the letter, and invited audience and everyone else to watch the letter at their own convenience. But just to say that was really an interesting time, because it was a moment to just stop and reflect and call on your moral consciousness, call on your inner being to say, why am I here? Am I just here to chase negotiators? But there is something at the heart of it all, our moral obligation towards the planet, towards Mother Earth. And that is what Laudato Si did. That is what the letter did. It didn't just bring in the voices of those who have not been heard, but it called on the inner being. In the movie, there's a segment where Pope Francis talks about the Tower of Babel, and he uses that narrative to bring out corruption and greed and enslavement of all humans to the system of corruption and greed that keeps on digging. It's an endless hole, endless pit that we're digging for ourselves, and he calls for us to stop. So when I watch the movie, which I cannot stop watching, when I watch it, it just calls on my inner spirit, calls on the moral consciousness of every person of goodwill to take action in some way or form.
Now, there was something else. Thank you for answering all these queries that are coming in. There's another one about the film, and you mentioned that there was a training for people to show the film. Is that, can one access that on your website, or how this person wants to know, how do they get that training so they could show the film and bring about a good outcome?
So on the website, you would find a lot of tools about, you would find a lot of tools. The website is theletterfilm.org. You would find a lot of tools about how to screen the movie, how to host a screening, how to take action. Basically, hosting the screening, you bring your community together, and a date and a time. And if you want some speakers, you can also do that. And you organize the screening. We really ask that you register your screening event on the website. The website is theletterfilm.org, which has so many tools on even how to write to your local your local representative, how to engage them in the conversation about the letter, appealing to their moral consciousness. So I invite everyone to go onto theletterfilm.org to get more tools on how to host a screening.
And you were also talking about the April 22nd event later this year on divestment, and talking about bringing it to the attention of our bishops to, it seemed to me there were two potential venues there. One would be doing an energy audit and trying to electrify the different parish buildings so that they were using, as a diocese, much less oil. And the other seemed to be to bring to the attention of the bishops divesting any of their funds from what would I say, from banks or from different
Industry.
Pardon?
Fossil industries.
Yes, that fund the fossil fuel industries, because a lot of the banks, in fact, do. I've read that a lot of our banks here in the United States do fund the fossil fuel industry. So another thing I was wondering about was just one last question, is the individual divestation. In other words, some of us have funds in retirement savings and in banks and such. And it seems it would be useful, very important for us to consider looking at where our funds are invested and seeing if we can transfer those to renewal, energy renewal programs.
Marita, you're so spot on. You know, as you said, many Catholics and people of goodwill, people of good faith, have put in money in their retirement accounts, even in their credit cards, that are coming from from banks that sponsor fossil fuel companies and industries that sponsor the fossil fuel business. And we've seen that this is something that you have the power to say, no, I don't want to either get money from a bank that deals with the fossil fuel industry, or I don't want to invest my money in a trust fund or a scheme that, you know, that would, the benefits would go to the oil and gas sector. We are going to be launching this campaign. You're quite ahead of us. We'll be launching this campaign when we make the divestment announcement on the 22nd of April, which is in about two or 3 months' time. That will be looking at how we can, you know, encourage Catholics and people of good faith to divest their personal assets, divest from banks which support the fossil fuel industry. Sometimes, if you the power is in your hands, I keep on saying this, to make good choices. So speaking to your bishops and Catholic institutions is one way of doing that, because majority of the money is in this institution. So yes, they must divest, but also using your own pockets and saying, I am taking my money out of that industry, from that dirty industry, really puts the power back in your hands. So this is a campaign that we will be launching on the 22nd of April. And stay tuned, there'll be so many tools, so many guidances on how you go about it. And there'll be so many, there'll be a platform to get stories of everyone who is taking action to shift their money away from this dirty industry.
Well, we have to come to an end now, but you have inspired us so much to see these many pathways that we need to walk and to take action. We need to be prophets. We need to live a sustainable lifestyle. And we need to do that by the decisions that you've put before us. And I'm deeply grateful. And we're also happy to have had this opportunity to meet you. And much better than reading anything you might write. But in fact, your talk will be published in the proceedings. And that will take a while to put together, but be assured that it will be published. So I'm deeply grateful to you. I can't express it enough, Lynn.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
having me, Marisa. It's such a pleasure to share this platform with you. And yes, our work continues. We have so much to do in terms of preserving our common home. And it's platforms like this that really spreads the message to all people. So thank you so much for having us. We are so grateful at the Laudato Si movement.
Thank you. And I realize, I just want to say that I have more hope having listened to you. And you really laid out a platform for us to take action. So thank you.
There is always
Have
hope.
a good rest.
Good evening. Good evening to everyone.
Bye-bye.